pro-democracy group in Sudan has conditionally accepted the United Nations offer to facilitate talks between the various parties in an effort to end a political deadlock between October's military coup. Following October's military coup. Now, it comes after some groups rejected the offer, saying they want the military to be kept out of the transitional governing coalition. Here to talk to us about this further, we're joined by Africa analyst Dr. Charles Sinkal. Dr. Charles, good evening and good to have you tonight here on In Focus. What are the conditions to this agreement?
Yes, good evening to your viewers. Thank you very much for having me. Yes, indeed, the condition is to return the country to civilian rule. I'm not sure that all the three parties who are involved that they're going to meet their agreement. We must remember that the agenda for the coup d'etat, they had their own intention. The pro-democracy as well, they've got their own intention. And as well, those people who feel that the military should be in charge, they've got also their own intention. So to bring these people on board to discuss the agenda for Sudan is not going to be quite an easy task. As we can see, it has escalated to this extent. My only worry and concern is that, Africa continues to fail to have dialogue and resolve the issues such as this in Africa. And they feel better when outside intervention, such as from the United Nations, come in, to mediate these talks. Already we have had so many heads of states and government, including former presidents and government, who had traveled to that region, to mediate the talks, including the former head of state of Nigeria. But all those talks and the envoy from the AU and the regional blocs has failed. But now, what will now bring something new from the United Nations? It's a question that many people would like to be answered.
Some argue that the resignation of Abdullah Hamdok has sparked a constitutional crisis that only international support can actually assist here in bringing the country back into democratization. Would you agree with that?
No, not really. I do not agree with that. We must remember that former Prime Minister Hamdok had an agenda that the military should be removed from the transition government. They wanted a civilian transition government that should be consist of the pro-democracy organizations, political parties, to be caretaker, in the transition until they announce the elections. But the military, they want those civilians transition government to be reporting to them, which is unprecedented in the history of the governance. You can't have the military and the civilian, working together in the governance. We know already that the military juntas, just like in Mali, we have conflicts there. They are only there to defend in terms of military and security threats, but in terms of the governance of the people, they do not know. But the resignation of Hamdok, it was such an failed attempt, which also he was recalled back, to negotiate, but he stood fast, in protecting the people of Sudan. Hence, the military now, they want to go to the international. Yes, they will go there to the international community, which is the United Nations agreements, but they've got their own interest to protect. We must remember as well that, the coup d'etat they carried out was unlawful, and any civilian government that will come forth in Sudan, they risk being arrested.
What is the risk then of the military actually granting itself additional powers here and even appointing its own prime minister?
Yes, indeed, that is something unprecedented in the history of Africa. During the transition periods, whether we have coup d'etats, normally, usually, those who are, in a coup d'etat, they appoint or they stand back, to protect the interests of the country, and the caretaker government is ushered in. But we see the escalation in that region has taken a different turn, where they are still holding on to power. Yes, one, they want to protect their interest, and two, there must have been a reason why they carried out that coup d'etat, and I think they could have been serving the interest of those who sponsored that coup d'etat, because these coup d'etat, they do not just happen, they happen by appointment. And those interests, they take advantage during these periods when there's a state of emergency where the country does not operate in the framework of the government. That's when they take advantage to do whatever which they can do. They can rip or rape the country and take the resources without recourse to any judicial or parliament subjective. But in any case, their time now has ended as the escalation of pro-democracy people and the protests, now they're escalating. We hope that the United Nations and the envoy that has been appointed, to mediate these talks, they shall find a solution either to accord amnesty to those who carried out the coup d'etat and let the military step aside, and give the power to the civilian rule, which I doubt that they won't accept.
Mm. Now, you've already mentioned, and you always do, even you did here tonight, that the matter of Sudan is not simply an African problem, but there are international hands here at play. Does this agreement in place with the pro-democracy group weaken the position of Russia?
Yes, they do, because they are protecting, Russia's advancement, including the Americans in that region. And they are making it very difficult. To them, they want to escalate the time of the military rule because it's easy for them to command and supply whatever military equipment to that region. But the lie does not go so far. And now the people from the outside, now those who've got interest as well, such as America, who's fighting against the Russians' invasion into that region, they also would like to protect their interests. So we shall just, keep our fingers crossed and see how the mediation is going to go and who's going to take the day. But again, the military's advancement or taking over the government, surely it does not serve the people of Sudan, and it actually escalates to the violence which is happening on the ground. If indeed they meant to protect the citizens from any civil wars and other atrocities or any other, economical hardship, they should have handed over the power, because there's no threat from the civilians of taking care of themselves or looking at building the economy after al-Bashir.
What happens then after the internationally facilitated inclusive political process, or at least what do you suggest should happen?
No, I think they have to listen to all parties, and I'm sure they have to look at this is not just a civilian talk, They have to involve the generals, the think tanks, on the continent or on the Security Council, and find out what is the military junta requires in that country. Because if they want peace to be restored in that country, they should have handed over the power to the civilian rule. But if they want they've got other hidden agendas which we do not know, it shall come to light, because now they'll be left without any alternative than to succumb to the situation, because already Sudan has been given sanctions.
Prof, Dr. Charles Sinkal, beg your pardon. I thank you for your time and joining us tonight here on In Focus. That's Dr. Charles Sinkal, the Africa analyst, giving us a sense there.